The following podcast is sponsored by Basico. At Basico, we understand your needs and pain points. Our expertise in CFO services, legal, finance IT, and people and payroll helps drive your business forward by inspiring change and challenging norms. We believe in deep explorative discussions and critical angles, the same spirit that fuels the Only Constant podcast hosted by our own Lasse Rindom. Discover more about Basico's vision and services at basico.dk. And if you like what you hear in this episode, please don't hesitate to share it with a friend. And now Lasse, take it away.
You are listening to The Only Constant, a podcast where we go beyond the usual discussions in technology and business and aim to explore more than explain. Join me for engaging discussions with a diverse range of global thought leaders as we seek to uncover new perspectives and insights in a free-flowing conversation. My guest today is Brian Evergreen, and I'm your host, Lasse Rindom. Hi, Brian, and welcome to The Only Constant. I'm super happy you're here today. And I think this is like, what is it? Our third try after a couple of postponements.
So I think it's our third.
Yeah. You're hard to get. Playing hard to get, Brian. But
thanks for having me.
This is so great. And I just want to, throw off this conversation because I was really intrigued by a comment you did in a common chat group we're part of, where you wrote, as part of a longer comment, you wrote that all I see so far is hype driven by leaders of AI companies, their investors, and crypto bros who rebranded to AI. So why did you make that comment, and what do you mean by it?
So it's been driving me a little bit crazy that people have been pushing this narrative that AI is going to take over all jobs. And ironically, the people that have been saying that are basically all have some kind of vested reason to say that. So Sam Altman and Dario Amodei say those kinds of things because the only way that it would take over jobs is if we figured out a way to use their Gen AI platforms to the degree that then we don't need workers in the same way that we did before. And then if you go a click deeper, someone's, I had a conversation with someone like a year and a half ago where they said, well, Eric Schmidt, also former Google exec, he said it as well. And then I went and found an article for them where it said Eric Schmidt leads funding round in AI coding startup. And it's like, right. So
there's a pattern. Are you saying you can see patterns? Your neural network
I am saying that I can see patterns sometimes. Yeah. And that it seems like for some reason that critical thinking skill might be in jeopardy more broadly. But yeah, so it does. And then I think the same thing with layoffs, right? When people are calling, when they said the block layoff was all AI, and then later even Jack Dorsey said, okay, we shouldn't have said that. It actually wasn't. We're hoping that AI will fill the gaps, but we don't actually have a plan, and we haven't produced something that is so great that now we don't need people. Klarna is the most public example of any company that's ever come out and said we're going to replace people with AI. They replaced 700 customer service support people with AI. And then a year later, there's this wonderful article in Futurism where it says company, removes their customer support and then panics and has engineers picking up the phone with customers while they, as their AI fails and while they try to rebuild their customer support.
You also have bad stories, Brian, like the McDonald's one where it couldn't even,
yes.
What was it? Did it put bacon on soft ice? I read someone said or something like that.
Well, yeah. Well, the McDonald's is interesting. That's a whole nother layer of it because they were testing, and I have a friend there at McDonald's. You might have met her as well, but you probably had her as a guest on the podcast, knowing you.
I think I tried to get her, and I'm still trying. So that's my
right,
So right. Shouldn't say too many bad things here.
Yeah. No, and I have nothing bad to say about her. She's fantastic. No, but she shared with me sort of the behind the scenes of how they really had a plan to roll out more and more autonomous drive-throughs, and with the assumption that people aren't looking for human connection in that little moment where they're driving through either coming into a store or driving through a McDonald's. They want food and fast and inexpensive. And Turns out that they hated it. Like the customers, even in that short window, still want to connect with another human. They don't care if they actually did some research. They don't, and I don't know about the McDonald's side, but I've seen other research where people don't actually care if it's a human making the food as much as they care about a human they're interfacing with. And so the idea that AI is just going to replace all this stuff, most of the people that I've seen say that have never actually worked at an enterprise, and they don't understand the complexity.
No.
And so most of what we do in enterprises, so much of what we do, and is not only the work, the output, but all the relationships. An enterprise is made up of a physical layer, like the actual hardware and buildings and so on. Then a digital layer, right, with the AI and software and Excel files and all that. And then there's a relational layer. I've been calling it a social layer, but I realized lately that relational might be even more clear, which is the stack of all the relationship, the network of relationships that sits on top of everything else. And that's why if you take out a great leader and you put someone else in, or if you do a giant layoff at an organization, all those relationships are suddenly, fractured or broken. And then the organization has to figure out, how do we reset our, where does our culture go from here?
Yeah, and then you're creating knowledge attrition, right? You're losing knowledge instead of creating a knowledge architecture, which is what you want to do with AI, basically, right? And you also, you also, what was I going to say with getting the? I was going to say something.
I'm sure it was the most insightful thing. That's the thing, right? When you have the most insightful thing to say, that's when you forget. Well, I'll just say that, when I was at Microsoft, if you said, Brian, who should I reach out? We're trying to figure out how to solve this kind of thing. If you'd asked an AI that, it would be like, oh, let's be even more specific. Let's say you were like, Brian, we have a Power BI problem, and we want to figure out how to, we're a customer. Let's say we're an end customer in CPG, and we have a problem with Power BI. I know you're in the AI space, but maybe somebody. If I didn't exist and there had been an AI agent instead of me, then that AI agent could have queried a database to try to see who in the Power BI space, and then come up with whether or not there is a policy for whether or not they can help customers with blah, blah, blah. And then they might come back and say, sorry, we're not allowed to help you with that. Or yes, here's the form that you get to fill out, which isn't necessarily the best customer experience. Isn't going to, I might know the context that actually this customer is up for renewal, and they're thinking about making a multi-$100 million Azure commit, and we need to do anything and everything we can to really make them happy. And I might also know, oh yeah, this person that I met at a cocktail hour from the Power BI team 7 years ago, that we've sort of kept in touch off and on, but we haven't had a reason to, work together per se. All of a sudden that person flashes into my mind. I reach out and say, hey, this is a really important customer. We're coming up on a big renewal. Do we think they're going to make a sizable commit? And they're interested in learning about this and this with Power BI. Would you mind, would you be willing to hop on a call with them?
So what you're saying is not every sale, not every relationship with a customer is transactional.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Surprise. We didn't know that. No one knew that. Oh, why? This is so wise, Brian. Why are you spilling it here? The whole world is like, oh, we can replace everything with, you get my...
Well, right. Yeah, exactly. The assumption that we can just replace it all with AI is well, and it's funny because I say this while also being a big proponent of AI.
Me too.
It's not that AI is the problem. It's more like, if you showed me a great saw or let's say hammers, right? Hammers are very useful. I'm a big fan of hammers. There's so many good things you can do. But if you proposed and said, we're not going to need wood anymore because now we're just going to build everything out of hammers, I would be like, I don't want a house made from hammers. I don't. I want there to be wood. I want there to be drywall. I want a lot of things that aren't hammers, even though I'm a big fan of what you can do with the tool. And so I think that's where I think when it comes to AI and AI agents, and the fact that we're also in this phase right now where people are misunderstanding what AI is really capable of, because of the category is being defined in large part by the current Gen AI leaders.
Yes.
And
did you see this? Did you see the article? CEO said something. Did you see that? There's this article, if you Google CEO said something, called Boda, I think he wrote about it in his newsletter. It's like, okay. And it's just the journalism right now in tech is just CEO said something journalism. So,
It's so funny because when you said it, I thought, I don't think I saw which CEO are you talking about? Because I assumed,
Sam Altman, all of them, right? All of them. Oh, now Jensen Huang said something. And funny enough, he said you need use more tokens. Okay, Dario Amodei came out and said, you need to use more agents. Whoa. Big news. Have you heard? He said that you need to use more agents. It's like, I really don't care. It's survivorship bias, right? It's survivorship. But these people, they have money, they have great valuations, which means they must be infallible. And then we're all like, oh, they're infallible. And they said something. Seriously, right?
Well, and I mean, if you think about what it takes to be the CEO, like if you look at Sam Altman, for example, right? And he's done some pretty cool things in his career. And I have respect for that, for what he's achieved.
Definitely.
But he's never worked at a major enterprise. So for him to opine on how much his solutions and his products are going to completely transform the enterprise, he doesn't have that expertise.
No.
And actually neither does Dario Amodei. So, and it's no scourge on them. And it makes sense that they would want to opine. It makes sense that they would want to, make predictions, and that they probably really believe those things. So I don't even, people say, oh, they're lying. And I maybe, but they might also actually fundamentally believe that, because when you are in a bubble where you're sort of hearing the same things, when you're hiring people that are in charge of, that are helping with AI safety, like I forget his last name, but there's I remember his first name because it's the same as my son's name, Leopold, who came out and wrote a big essay as he left, and he was like 20 or 22 or something like that. Drop out. I don't know if he dropped out or graduated from Stanford, but he was like, a leader in AI safety for OpenAI. So when you have a very, very small circle of people that all have the same either or similar backgrounds, that are all talking about things in circles with each other, and everything's kind of quiet and private because they hadn't launched to the world, then they're going to have a very isolated point of view by the time they get it out there. And they're going to have imagined, and I think genuinely believe, this is going to change everything. Why would you do it if you didn't think it would change everything? And
I remember my old history professor. I studied history, right? He said at one point that, because we spoke about, it just reminded me of this. We spoke about I had a witch course with him about witches in Europe, right? I studied history, okay. And then I said, and then they thought they were witches, and then he was like, no, Lasse, Lasse. He said, no, they didn't think they were witches. They were witches. He said, and if you don't understand that, you can't understand them, and you can't understand what they're trying to tell you and how they're operating. And this is the same thing you're saying here. If you don't understand that this is their outlook, Lasse, you can't relate to their messaging, right? And the whole world is relating to their messaging, but they don't know that these people actually believe this, but they're in a bubble. They're in, these people were not witches, but you have to understand. You get my point, right? You have to understand this, the different depth of perspective. And I didn't understand what he said at that time, but as I've grown older, I'm like, okay, it totally makes sense. Yeah, they were witches, right? I can't study this if I don't trust it.
Exactly. No, exactly. I think they genuinely, firmly believe everything that they're saying. I think Dario Amodei does believe that in the next 1 to 5 years, 50% of white collar jobs are going away. And I think then anyone that's on the other side who's ever had a white collar job is especially those of us who also have the benefit of being technical. Right. So I can easily see that is, I mean, unless there's something I'm missing, which is why I put that question into the chat. There was someone in the, there's, who it was, Lasse, that was in the chat that basically said, no, we have to take this seriously, and here's why. And again, no scourge on them, because this person seems to genuinely believe that as well. And so, but I don't think any one of us who has had a technical role, who understands what enterprise architecture is and looks like in most organizations, will know that there is really no, and also any of us who's ever been, I mean, that's the thing that makes me chuckle is, which one of us would gladly take that IVR or AI system on the phone for customer support if you got an option where it said, press 1 to speak to a human immediately, press 2 to speak on the IVR system? 1, like every human in the world would press 1, right? I mean, unless they have like severe like introversion or something, maybe. But
Yeah,
like,
but why have we
most
given up?
everyone,
Why have we
right?
given up on leading practice, right? Leading customer service. Why have we given up on that and be like, oh, it's okay with best practice? That would probably not get my company replaced by some of my competitors. They'll probably all love me
Right,
for
right,
writing
right.
chatbots, right? It's like it's
Right.
absurd. And if you just
It
go back
is.
the last 3 years, right? You also see 3 years ago, everyone was like, oh, you're going to get 30% efficiency gains by using ChatGPT or Copilot. How many companies have gotten that, Brian?
Right. Right. Well, good question. I agree with you. I mean, I never, I told people, because back then, 3 years ago, you would have seen the article I wrote. ChatGPT is not your AI strategy.
And there's not just an
Right.
article, is it, Brian? It's a t-shirt.
T-shirt as well. Yeah, and
You have to send me one. I need that.
I can send you the link for it.
Oh, no.
So I've actually been told by enough people that I need to make a hat and some other, a coffee mug and stuff. I didn't think it would be that popular, but it's been
Love
funny
the coffee
because
mug.
I would totally drink from that coffee mug, right?
Yes.
So, especially if it gives people an opportunity to do it passive aggressively as well, like on a meeting, right? Where there's somebody's going over it,
On passive aggressive stuff to bring to a meeting. I've actually thought lately about just going out with Franz Kafka, The Process, and just every time someone's saying, I'll just put it on the table and say, what are we talking about? But I won't, because it's just confusion. But I won't do that. That's a side note. Sorry, but it's just
no, fair enough. So but the article is basically saying that ChatGPT is a tool a new tool on the board. But the board that doesn't mean the board's changed. That doesn't mean suddenly all the rest of the pieces are irrelevant. It's like, it's a piece. And for anyone who's ever played Bug House or Siamese chess is what is, I think it was more traditional name, but basically we have two chess boards. Have you played this? We have two chess boards. One of us so you're partnered up. So there's 4 people playing. And so let's say you and I were a team and we were playing against this gentleman from the chat and one of his buddies, let's say. With
the marbles where you're moving around with different color ends.
Normal chess. So what it does is what it would be is that let's say I'm playing as white and the gentleman from the chat is playing as black. Then that would mean you as my partner would have to play as black. And then the person that is on the other team that's playing against you would be playing as white. What would happen is every time I take a piece on the board, I'm picking up a black piece, right? And you're playing as black. So I would hand you that piece, and then you get to choose as you collect these pieces that I've been inevitably winning. Then you get to choose, okay, am I going to move one of the pieces on the board, or am I going to take this shiny queen that Brian handed me and place it on the board as a reinforcement? So it's actually, it from a strategy level, it's sort of like blows open, because you're not just thinking about your board, you're thinking about the other board. Yeah. And you might do something on your board where you sacrifice your queen because you know that if you get that knight, it's checkmate on the other board. And so and then you get into this sense of flow, and then it's with, timed, you can do it with timers, right? 5 minutes each.
Brian, I think this might be the most complex thing anyone has ever explained on this podcast. And I had people explain hypergraphs, right? Seriously. Okay, so...
Okay, I'll stop.
I had Carl Friston explain the free energy principle, but this is like blowing my mind. I have no idea what's going on in this game.
Yeah. Well, you play chess, I'm assuming, right?
Yes,
have you played chess?
Yes.
So then just imagine if instead of moving one of your own pieces, you instead get to put another piece down on the board anywhere you want, so long as it's not.
Okay, Brian, what you're saying is that this is an ecosystem movement where you move one piece, everything else happens somewhere else, right? That's the point, isn't it? And to some extent also that when you do something, your competitors will do something as well, and is that what you're trying to say? That there's no, it's not.
You mean like
it's not a zero-sum game,
No, I mean the point I'm trying to make is that is that from a Gen AI perspective, it's dropping another piece, like in Bug House. Like now there's a new piece that's been dropped down onto the board, and it's all right, that piece wasn't here. I made a strategy without that piece. Now the piece has been dropped. Yeah. Should I reconsider my strategy is the next question. And, if you look at the press at the time 3 years ago, everyone should reconsider everything. Everything's changing. What's interesting is that, to your point about the article with the CEO, a CEO said something, which I'm going to have to go check out. It's been interesting because our point I was making was that you still need a vision and you need a strategy. And this is just one of the pieces. The hierarchy goes vision, strategy, tactics, Tools are the very end. And so I think that when people are looking for and saying, well, Gen AI is changing everything, so we have to completely revamp our strategy. And then they say the follow-up thing, which I'm sure you've heard maybe on this podcast even 100 times, much less more broadly, which is, well, everything in AI is changing so fast. What do we do? And it's like, well, and that's why I wrote a different article where I said, a tool update is not, what did I say? Something like a tool update is not news. Because it's like, if DeWalt came out and said, we're now announcing the fastest saw of all time. And then Milwaukee came out and said, and our saw blade, we just got to another degree of sharpness. And then it's like, whoa, things are changing so much in the construction industry. I can't even keep up.
I need to build something. I need to build something.
Hurry,
what should I do?
Otherwise, your home will be obsolete, right? And so
we spoke to a company recently that has a 30% margin on a billion kroner, but that's a lot, firm, and they still do everything in paper. That was like, I was mind boggled. Like, how can you do that? How can you operate in 2026? Amazing. But they were like, but our core operation, we're not about digital. It didn't matter. I'm like, that would be like, try to explain that to someone in Silicon Valley. Just, I couldn't, I hardly understood it myself. Like, why? What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. No, and it's funny because you walk on any manufacturing floor and you'll see, there's a lot of systems where, you're seeing the pressure on one inside the machine on one, a little dial. It's not digital. You're seeing, all these different things are, and you'll have an engineer where they'll hear a sound and they'll know, oh, that means that I need to turn the temperature up based on that sound on this extruder because they just have that expertise. And so, and it's completely not digital. And so, but it's been interesting because what I've sometimes reminded folks is, if you had set a strategy, because when they say, well, everything's changing so fast, where do I even start? I say, well, let's say you set a strategy, first of all, based on value. So there's a total addressable value that you can create in the world as an organization. And you're creating some amount of it if you're in business, right? And there's more that you could theoretically create that your either customers or new customers would pay you for, that is addressable, but that you're not currently capturing, right? And then within that, there's an amount that's being done by people and software and maybe your current whatever digital tools you have or paper, whatever your processes are. And then there's an amount that that's, let's say, a part of a Venn diagram within the big circle. And the other half of the Venn diagram is addressable by AI agents and AI. Yeah. And there's this tiny little sliver of overlap between the two, where you could use AI agents to take something you're already doing and do it more efficiently or more cheaper or faster, right? And so but that's the starting point. Everyone looks at, how do we take what we're already doing, the value we're already creating, and do it better or faster or cheaper with AI? When that's just fundamentally the wrong question. The question should be, wow, we have this entirely new capability we didn't have before, based off of the value that we create in the world and that people are willing to pay us for. Is there something now that we could do that we couldn't do before that would create more value that would either, mean that they're willing to pay a premium or even maybe an entirely new product or service category that hasn't existed until now, that we're well positioned with our current market footprint, our current core competency, our current expertise, all that, right? And so you're not behind. Even now, 3 years after AI came out, you're not behind, because most people wasted the last 3 years doing prompting workshops and, teaching everyone how to do tools, integrating AI into their, either into a chatbot externally or into some kind of internal Claude or ChatGPT instance. And that's fine, but that's just completely different than turning around and saying, what is the value that we can create in the market?
I think the most absurd thing right now is and two things actually, is that we people forget that if AI can do it, it's almost free, because everyone has an AI that's almost free. So if you're an extension of AI, you're worthless. You have to do something different. You have to give another service.
Exactly.
And then the second thing is that everyone's been focusing, and this is to your point about everyone giving licenses and prompt courses like that, everyone's been focused on this individual optimization, right? Individuals optimized. That's transformation. Yeah. I'm like, since Fordism and Lean, and when have we ever believed that, Brian, that optimizing individuals will make anything better? It's like the biggest scam of the last 3 years, saying like, just give them these licenses and your company will magically transform. But people don't align. And just my key point is, we will want more when we do AI. Right. We'll want more, and more will mean more processes, more people, more priorities, more complexity. And that means more meetings, more bureaucracy, more difficult accountability sets up, right? Not less. So I'm just like, how can we, but we'll get more outcome. That's why I believe in AI, because we'll get more outcome from it. But it will not be easy,
No. There's no easy button. AI, people wanted the easy button with, first they're like, is statistics easy button, and is SharePoint workflows, is Power Automate the easy button? Is Power Automate was the same idea, right? Let's democratize the ability to create workflows to everyone, and look at all the productivity we'll have. And there were organizations where that was great, especially when it was centrally managed, ironically. But yeah, I could not agree more with you that this idea that, democratization, unfortunately, while I believe in democracy as a political principle, and in terms of in organizations trying to do bottoms up innovation, it can't. Yes, there are all these. There's
also democracy. Also democracy. Democracy is also always checks and balances in a long chain and alignments.
Yep.
Like tons of layers all the time. It's been since the Roman times as well. Like, so, and I know you're American. I heard about American man, 50% of them thinks about the Roman Empire every day. I don't know if you're in that bucket.
No, not every day. But, I recently got invited to do a keynote in Athens. So I started thinking about the Romans and the Greeks. And,
the phalanx, you came out with the phalanx uniform, right? But anyway,
that's funny. So I was just going to say that, that basically, though, if you were speaking of Italy, an example I often give is Duomo, like in Florence, right? This insane architecture that they were able to achieve. And I always tell people, imagine the most beautiful building that you've ever been inside of. Like, actually picture it. And then imagine you could somehow transport back in history to the moment that those people came together and they're like, we're going to build this building. And they, let's say it's, in my case, Duomo. For you, it could be a cathedral, right? It could be anything. And then, or Taj Mahal. Yeah. And they say, all right, how are we going to build this building? And someone says, let's start with some quick wins. Why don't we build a door? Let's build a door first.
No, Brian. Let's give Dave a better saw.
Right. Well, exactly. Well, and then yes. And
I heard they have a good saw over here. It's a sharper one. I think then we'll get to it.
Exactly.
You want a monument for your dead wife? Give Dave a better saw.
That's the other half of the joke is that basically if they went through Florence and gave hammer and saw workshops to every citizen in Florence and said they're going to crowdsource Duomo. Like,
so funny.
Nope,
this is so funny.
They're not. And so it's so obvious to us when we look at buildings, right, that the complexity would never work. But I think inside of enterprises, people think, well, it's all just digital. Like, I can't tell you. I had a CEO of a $50 million company that I was working very closely with a couple of years back. An incredible human being, absolute just titan in their industry, like truly just incredible, and an icon and well known. And they were spending weekends trying to learn about AI because they thought, if I just kind of do some prompt engineering I don't think vibe coding had come out as a term yet, but they were like, it seems so easy. It seems like I should just be able to do this and I'll be able to launch a digital AI product off all of my IP. And I kept saying, like, I'm sorry, but that is just, it's not that easy. If it were, 10 other people would have already launched it. Instead, it's the like the old saying that, that most people miss opportunity because it shows up in overalls and it looks like work.
But just like you came into my podcast finally, everything good is worth waiting for, right, Brian? And I think people need to understand that as well, right? That you have to, but you get my point, right? Of course you do. But it's just flabbergasting me. Also looking at how most companies are still at this, the chat level, and then everyone's like, oh, but we can replace tomorrow. But you can't even build an agent that, decision making. Right. You said before that culture and the social relationship layer. I would actually say it's mostly an accountability layer if you strip it out. It's about who's accountable for what all the time.
Yeah. Yes, and I think
that's what makes the friction, right?
the nodes on a relational network operate differently than the nodes on a synthetic network. And what I mean by that is, like, for instance, if you were to try to look on Google and say, like, how would I ever get in touch with Snoop Dogg? Right? Let's say that you looked on Google and you said that, right?
Have you done that, Brian?
I haven't, but bear with. So you would get like, oh, well, you should do this or that, or, like Snoop Dogg is a very, you probably get like Snoop Dogg is a well-known, blah, 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 right? The big explanation on who he is. And then there might be like maybe a form somewhere that you could fill out. And the odds that thing is going to be how well monitored. And they're going to be looking for, if anything, is this person bringing a bag of money or not? And if not, then we're not going to get back to them. Right? If you reached out to me and said, hey, Brian, I'm trying to figure out how to get in touch with Snoop Dogg. Do you know anybody? I literally have a signed contract between myself and Calvin Brodus Jr. for an event that we ended up canceling. But like, yeah, I could, I'd probably say you'd have to have a good enough reason for me to leverage that relationship to bring something.
I have a great podcast if Snoop Dogg is looking to, what is the only...
he's never actually famously
constantly, I don't know.
There we go. Oh, yeah. I'd be curious to hear what he thought the only constant
whistle was. With the whistle, dizzle. I could do that. I could do all that,
So, but my point is that, like, one, you never know what the relationships will provide, but also just the speed at which, even if I didn't happen to know him firsthand, if I knew, if it was something where you wanted, like, if you want to get in touch with the Microsoft CEO and you had something, or if you want to get in touch with, let's say it's not that, but not
this
a person.
This is so cool, because you're basically saying that the patronage networks that we've sort of in democracies tried to say they don't exist, but they always exist. Patronage networks and relationship networks like that, where you know people, someone, all that doesn't transfer to this, weird digital org chart. And I'm now what's going to ask you, because I hate that. I read it in books and I see it everywhere that people are like, oh, you need to have a new org chart with AI agents. I don't have an org chart with my ERP system. It's part of my enterprise architecture data landscape, but my ERP system is probably the most productive part of my enterprise. It's not in my org chart. I'm not like having conversations with my ERP system. How are you doing today? Are you fine? Are you working? Is this API still good for you? I don't do that. But you get my point. So we're gonna have conversations with our ERP systems, and where do you want to develop your skills? You don't fucking do that. You just add skills to it.
It's just a waste. Honestly, having a conversation with AI that's like any kind of relational thing is actually just a waste of your time, because you're not building. The purpose of conversation is to build relationship and to learn. So the learning part you can do with AI, definitely double check anything, because it could be hallucinated, but you're not building a relationship with something, right? And so
I made a joke today. I loved, right? I posted the picture from the Artemis 2 where you see the planet Earth in the background, and then I just pointed on and said, you are here getting existentially validated by a machine,
Yeah, it's true, especially when it's so sycophantic, right? Yeah. It's just going to tell you. So, but what I would say, to what you said about the, I love what you said about the org chart thing. I've been saying that for a while now. I actually had somebody I was working closely with on a project, and I didn't tell them this, but I started to distance myself from them when they started talking about how someday soon all meetings will just be held by AI avatars talking to each other, and AI agents will be a part of our org chart, and everyone get ready for your AI coworkers, and I just thought, okay, to me, like, that's in the loony bin side of the world. Like, that's actually not logical. And while I understand that it's an analogy that some people find helpful, it's actually crazy to think that we would ever treat AI like coworkers, or that it ever could be a coworker. It's unless there were some kind of major between quantum and AI, and like 15, 30 years down the road, someone's made some kind of breakthrough where there's actually sentient machines.
It's a C-3PO dream, right? But my problem with C-3PO is always this, he's walking around talking. Why is he not just fixing things through a data protocol, right? Why R2-D2 is way more efficient, right? And also this, some Star Wars comics, I've seen these robots, they're typing on keyboards. I'm like, why do you have an advanced machine communicating with another advanced machine through a keyboard, QWERTY keyboard? What's going on, man? Why?
It's like the her movie where she says, "Do you mind if we communicate post speech or something like that?" Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So,
and did you see also this? What was this? There was this dystopian Netflix movie where the robots were trying. They have rights and they're trying to protect. I can remember it. You know, there was this war between humans and robots, and then at some point, someone shoots a robot, and then the robot runs out and shouts "help" to the other robots. I'm like, no, the other robots would know instantaneously. You know,
right, like a hive mind.
Yeah. Why do you? This is like the most stupid anthropomorphizing BS ever, right? I'm like, I can't,
exactly.
Anyway,
I agree with you, and the way I've been trying to share it with folks is to say that work continues to be a human endeavor.
Yes,
and
because we are the one buying it, we are the one making the demand.
We're the one buying it. We're on every side of the supply demand equation. And so instead, we should be thinking of not AI as a coworker, because that's just going to confuse people, especially younger people who are new to the enterprise, trying to figure out. They don't know any of the acronyms yet. So they don't throw this idea, this existential question.
No, but do you know what they know? Do you know what they know? They know who can promote them. They realize that immediately, and that's not the ChatGPT enterprise subscription, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's what young people know. That's what they realize immediately, right? So it's also this,
like, where's the power? Where's the nexus of power that I can get close to?
Who's accountable so I can suck up to them and find out how I can get promoted in his silo.
Back to relationships, right? That's why people go to happy hours and build relationships. And so what I tell people when they're trying to figure that out is to say, just don't treat AI just like you would advanced automation. And it's exactly the same. It just has the interfaces is slightly different, and the capabilities are different. And so that's great. And you should explore what capabilities it has, look at how it can be useful creating value for your customers, and focus on that. And don't waste your time with this new org chart conversation or AI as a coworker conversation, because it's just not. And it isn't going to be.
I think Serge Belongi said on the podcast that there are some companies that are benefiting from the story that these are like human. They're trying. He said, "Why don't we make it in look like some old computer green text? Why don't we make it talk like this? I am a. Why should it sound like it's your best friend and be like I don't know. Why do we do that? Who's benefiting from it? Does it change the fact that it's still a machine?" He asked that basically, right? And the thing is, it's an anthropomorphizing, so it confuses us to believe things. They're playing on it, on purpose, which is, if you look at it, really weird, right?
Well, the paradigm, the VC paradigm, right? You have to be able to show adoption. You have to be able to get subscribers. You want to keep subscribers engaged and show usage, so that when they're up for renewal on their subscription, they don't think, "Oh, I never even used that thing anyway." And so those are the reasons I think they double down on trying to create the user experience that will be sticky, right? And so, but I agree with you that, especially from an enterprise perspective, there's a lot of ways that it could just be functionally valuable.
The value is still there without having the and how are you? I don't know, Brian. I don't that. I don't need that. And but also back to you said about we talked about the CEO said something and Altman, all these people, right? And the future and how they're predicting, and sometimes they're predicting both that the future is good and bad. In our prep chat, we spoke a lot about our families actually and what they meant to us and our purposes, you and me, right? Some AI leaders have been very outspoken about how they see the future for their own children. I'm talking about Altman here, very much, right? He's been like, "Oh, I love that my children will grow up in the future with AI," and next second he's saying the future's everything's going to be ruined with AI is dangerous. Like, well, okay, So, what future do you want to see for your children?
It's a good question. So, I think we have a lot of work to do when it comes to socially in our world right now. And one of them is, I think, that the data now shows that screens are extremely harmful for children. And like the schools spent, at least in the US, I think it was 30 billion trying to get screens into every classroom, close the digital divide. And then it's the first ever, generation, or at least since we've been recording this, that has shown lower cognitive skills at their school age than their previous generation in history, since they've been measuring it. And basically the culprit is, I think, twofold. I don't think anything's isolated, but I think one is screens, and because I believe all learning is human. And so I think that the screens is not an adequate substitution for the experience of learning with a teacher and together with peers. And then 2, I think that every adult around these children having a phone that they're constantly distracted by, instead of being fully present, I think has also, even when I remember going, you go to the doctor's office and you'd strike up a conversation with a stranger. That doesn't happen almost ever anymore because everyone's glued to their phones. I had an experience recently with my kids where they were running up to a family member. And I had almost like a flashback where I remembered something from my own childhood. And it was interesting because this family member was looking at their phone and they were running up so excited to see this person. They hadn't seen them in a couple months. And this person had this moment of oh, hi. Right. And just the difference of quality of that experience for our kids versus, the other person, there's no phone. Like my childhood, there was no cell phone at all. So then my family members, when they came to see me, from the time they left home to the time that the whole drive, right, they might be listening to the radio, but there's nothing distracting them. They're not thinking sure, they might be thinking about other things, but they're on their way to this place that we're going to meet up. They get out of the car. They're already in the parking lot. I wonder if they're here. And then they're looking through. It's just a completely different amount of presence. And so for me, when I think about the kind of world I want to create for my children and that I am doing everything we can already to try to build around them in the meantime is one that is not back. Because I think the idea of being, yes, I'm sure every generation has a version of nostalgia that they're oh, if only it were like it were when I were a kid. So not necessarily.
I was also going to say, great comment, Brian. Let's put it on LinkedIn. No, but that was a bad joke. Sorry.
Nice. No, LinkedIn is useful, right? But my kids don't know what Instagram is. They don't know what LinkedIn is. They don't know they've never heard of social media. And so I use LinkedIn as a tool. But really, for me, it's about relationships is the most important thing. And that's what I'm teaching my children, instilling in them is how to talk to other people, how to look other people in the eye, show them respect. And we don't have screens at dinner. We go out and we eat at restaurants with no phones in sight, and we just talk, and other families especially older generations will stop and say, it's so nice to see a family out to dinner. And it's why is that rare? That should absolutely not be rare. That should be everywhere. And so I think for me, the future that I don't think I'm not too worried about in terms of what jobs will exist, because I think that the job landscape will continue to evolve, and there will be new jobs that don't exist now. There will always be opportunity for entrepreneurs as long as we have societies that care about and support entrepreneurialism. There will always be new opportunities to come up with things.
We'll always need workers that have money to buy produce from machines, right? So let's figure out some PowerPoints these workers can do. Oh, are we already doing that? We're already living in this world, right? That's my point. I said this on the previous episode. We're already superfluous. We're already, what do you call it? We're already displaced. We're just doing it in PowerPoint, right?
That's funny. Yeah, no, I disagree. Obviously. Right. Well, I think, I think the work that we do, I guess it all depends on how you're looking at it. But I think
do you hunt? Do you build your own buildings, Brian? Do you do any of the things that you really need? Or are you just blabbering on podcasts and doing PowerPoints?
That's very funny, especially because my dad was a general contractor. And so I did grow up building buildings. And
nice.
Yeah, so I definitely have and could. And
what also, a tool is. Great.
So, yeah, that's actually why I do so many building analogies, is because it's also
love it. My dad was a mason. Yeah, my dad was a mason, so I know too.
So, lots of stone. That makes sense. You've got kind of a stony, kind of disposition sometimes. So no, I'm just kidding.
No, I know what a good foundation looks like. Oh, there we go. Very good. Yeah, you need to have a roof.
But I get what you mean around. I wouldn't even. That's where it comes back to. It's actually not obsolescence as much as it's just the complexity of the systems that we built. I wrote a guest chapter in a book that came out, I think maybe last summer, maybe I can't keep track anymore, but came out a while ago. And it was about sustainability, and it was called something sustainable innovation or something. But what I said was interesting, because people look and they have lots of criticism for where we're at, right? The systems that we have and all these systemic issues that we have. And it's interesting because what I basically wrote about is, like, if you look 100 years ago, the problems that we were facing as society were, okay, we want to get a chicken in every pot. We want everyone to have enough protein based off what they understood, based off what they believe. We want all houses to always be able to be warm, even if they don't have firewood. We want to figure out another way to get everybody warm. Imagine if everyone could just push a button in their house and just get warm or get cold. Wow. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Yeah, and let's also stop. Let's stop throwing shit in the streets too. I think that's a good idea too.
The cynicism, Lasse.
Sorry.
But basically so if you think about 100 years ago, the dreams that they had, the visions that they had, what they were solving for, like, they did it. Everyone can access protein now. Yeah. But then that created a whole new host of problems. And on top of it, people have become, to your point about hunting, dependent on the systems as they exist today. So then when people look and say, well, this is awful, this is all because of corporate greed and blah, blah, blah. Yes, there is absolutely corporate greed that exists. But also there were people that were trying really hard to make our world better. They succeeded at what they were trying to do without being able to predict ahead of time how that would create dependencies that weren't the best, and how that would create new problems that would be
someone said recently to me, that happiness is basically wealth minus envy, right? That is an equation or something like that. And the thing is, you live like kings today. I live like a king. I have lots of room. I have a nice, very warm bed, probably a better bed than any Sun King or something like that. I am pretty sure I have a softer bed, better for my back. I have a car. I don't bumble around in a horse cart. I eat more diverse, different foods from different parts of the world than he ever did. And still, I'm a little bit envious because someone else has, a little bit more than me. So what you're saying is we get everything today, but we're still, unhappy because the happiness is not really tied to this, and that's the weirdest thing, right?
It's not wealth minus envy. No, I think, I've heard other ones that are, the truisms like happiness is your current situation minus expectations or something.
Yeah, like that. It's all the same. Yeah,
that's not necessarily true because some people are not in great situations. But what I would say is that I think that happiness has more to do with also purpose, right? And feeling like you're moving toward and acting purpose and relationships. Like I'm achieving something that is aligned with what I think I'm here to do. And regardless of why I think I'm here, but I'm doing something that I feel like is valuable for the world in some way, even if it's just for one person that it's impacting. Plus relationships, people I can share those things with, but also can share things that don't matter, like a favorite local restaurant or something, right? I think those are probably, to me, what happiness actually consists of. And I think that we often conflate and confuse and think that we need to be happy. Happiness is the measurement of whether or not of a life well lived.
A life well lived.
A life well lived. I don't know what that means, but no, happiness is, people confuse happiness as a measurement of a life well lived. Yeah. Like, well, was I happy? But I don't think we're going to, at the end of our lives, look back and say, was I happy? We'll say, did it matter? Did I make something? Did I do something good with my hands?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this also previously in the podcast. I think Sigmund Bauman said, I don't remember. I think I've had a happy life, but I don't remember one happy week because every week had a challenge to overcome. But at the accumulation of overcome challenges, I'm super happy because I succeeded.
Right.
I'm here. I'm 80 years old. I made it. I overcame all these things.
Right.
I think also some of the things that when everyone's predicting the future now, and I'm asking you what you want for the future, and things that console me, sometimes in this, and also things that make me think that none of these people have any clue what's going to happen, is that we have all the digital tools in the whole world right now, right? We can work from anywhere. You can move anywhere, and everyone is moving to the city. I'm like, why on earth are you doing that? You can work anywhere, just
right.
But and you have all the music in the whole world, Brian. All the music on Spotify. Just go on Spotify. You have everything, and then you're buying vinyls. Like, why are you doing that? Why are you making friction just for fun of it? Right? It's super weird. Yeah. It's super weird. Things are not linear. Things are oblique, and it's all about demand, right? It's all about this irrational demand that is ours, right?
Yes, I agree. It is about demand, and I think things expand and contract. Like if you think about it, the TAM for smartphones is going to keep going up in projections based off of the current historical trajectory. Then you look at this new set of like parents who are looking at their kids who are 10 and younger right now, or 13 and younger, and saying, no, I'm not getting my kid a smartphone. If being in school means that they're going to be pressured and have FOMO to have smartphones, or they're going to get bullied, then I'm going to homeschool them. Like, right? Like, what would have to be true for me to be able to undo some of the damage that I've seen done in some of these younger generations? Okay, then I'm going to make those changes. And I think that people assume based off historical trajectories, it'll just continue forever, but they're forgetting that people might look and say, I don't like the effect of what that's had, even in my own life. I don't want to be glued to a phone all day. I don't want to be away from my family and wake up and realize, I've just aged 10 years and missed out on all these important memories. I think it's something,
that we've estranged ourselves from the entire supply chain. I thought about this sometimes when I walk into any, mall, and just think about every single piece you see and think about where it comes from. The supply chain is like massive. Yes. It's like, what? This little plastic thing here, it probably came from 1,000 places on earth. I'm like, what? How? And it assembled here. And this is strange, but I have no clue what's going on, right? But then we think that we will be okay with doing the same things as people, with an estrangement from our identity. Basically, that's what's happening. The algorithmic enshittification that's just taking over who you are, telling you who you are, yours, and it is happening. But there's also the opposite movement. I just think it's really difficult to see, are we going to accept it or not? Because some people are, and some people are. You see, in some big cities, meat consumption is going down, but on the country as a whole, it's going up. It's happened in Denmark at least recently, and this is This is what I'm interested in all the time. This is also why I try to do this podcast, saying, what are these weird ecosystem changes that happens that are not, because you could say Silicon Valley is like these people in the city saying, everyone's eating less meat, but in reality, people are eating more meat. So what's actually the truth here? How is the ecosystem changing? If we want more quality in the future. Yeah, when you're not buying from Wish, right? It's... do you get what I'm trying to say? There's some things here that are moving up and down, contracting, and as you said,
yes, right. Yes, I do. I get what you're saying. And I think that to me, it's maybe not a fool's errand. That's too harsh. But I don't think that these sociological changes happen necessarily overnight. I mean, it's sort of like a little bit, and then all at once. And sometimes we look at some of the little bits and go, okay, that's about to tip. And then it never does. Like if you looked at NFTs, right? Like that was the smart move 5 years ago. Thank goodness many of us thought, it doesn't add up. But the data said that it was going to, right? So, and so people wasted money. And the same with the metaverse, right? Like Meta went all in on the metaverse. And a bunch of us looked at it and went, okay. And to me, the idea that all humankind was ready to just like log on and try to turn into a version of Ready Player One didn't really add up.
No, it's just like, this is not a product. This is a thing we do. A metaverse is a thing we do.
Yeah, we're seeing a huge resurgence now in in-person events. More than since 2020. It's a continued.
Do you remember 2020? We're never going back to the office. We're never going to meet each other again. And like,
right, exactly.
And hey, what are we doing? We're just doing nothing else.
Yeah, exactly. Well, right, and even like in the dinners that I host with the Future Solving Club, like if we tried to get that many VPs in a room in 2019, it'd be significantly harder. Now they're a lot of the infrastructure for the types of events that they enjoy going to has scaled down. And so when there's a gap in the market we step into, and they're like, yes, we'd love to come to this dinner featuring a thought leader. And so, I do think that those societal shifts will continue. Sorry if you hear tapping in the background, by the way. There is a bird tapping on my window for some reason. It's been going on for like a week. We looked it up. Apparently it's an omen of like trying to bring good news because it's not like a raven or something. So we'll take it.
Is it a storch? Is it a storch? We call it coming with a baby? Or?
It's like a cute little, I don't know what the actual.
What do you call it? Stork?
Not a stork. No.
No more babies, Brian. No, okay.
No, well, no, I'm not going to say no more ever, but we're good right now with the 9-month-old and the 7-year-old and 5-year-old. But yeah, in terms of how things expand and contract, I do think that like, for instance, like I love what you said about like, why are people moving to cities? Like I've been thinking during 2020, I actually thought, wouldn't it be great to go build a community where different people each had like the thing they were really good at, and the community like supported each other, and we felt safe letting our kids go play outside, and like, you know, not like The Village, right? Like, I know we have all these dystopian ideas about like how things could go wrong, but it's like, man, wouldn't it be great if there was a way to do that? I think there's more and more people trying to figure out, like, is this the good life? Do we want to all just be stacked on top of each other in cities? And if not, how do we make this other version of life work? And again, back to relationships and value and purpose, right?
Yeah, but it's just always, you know, I think, and this is one of my favorite quotes. I also mention it often on the pod. I think that, you know, Richard Rommel says in Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, you know, that people think that when things are unclear, they should look further ahead, say, oh, how's it going to be in 10 years? But really, when things are unclear, you should look more proximate on your strategic objectives, because you can't see,
I like that.
You can't, you know, you're in a fog. I'm always comparing it to running in a fog. You don't do that on a cliffside. If you're in a cliffside and there's a fog, you take baby steps. You take really careful steps.
Right.
And I think that's what people are going wrong right now. Everyone's like, oh, but I can see the in 10 years C-3PO. Let's go full autonomous immediately. No, maybe, you know, maybe just draft first or something. Maybe just pull in some information. Or let's not go full autonomous agent, right? Just because someone who sells autonomous agents said that.
Well, to that, I would say too that two things. To build on your analogy, if someone walked up to you and said, well, if you want to run right now in the fog, run that way. It's completely flat. It's completely clear. It's completely safe, all grass and flat. So that's the way you should go. Would you trust that person and sprint in that direction or not? If it was someone you knew that you trusted, right, you might go, okay, you might still decide, you know what, no. But I feel like there's a version of that happening today where people are saying, well, yeah, just run at AI agents. Here's the pattern. And what they're promoting is something I call mouth for brains agents, where the agent is using an LLM as the central sort of brain of the operations, which means it has mouth for brains, because LLM is a mouthpiece. It's not a brain. It can't think.
No, but also also the people are like, you know, I've just been running on cliff sides. It's okay. I've run on cliff sides every day. Look where I am.
Sure.
I've run so much on cliff sides. You should just go run. Yeah. Just run. Nothing can happen. You know, it doesn't matter. There's a fog. Just give it a go. You know, have fun. You know,
those are crypto bros.
YOLO, right? Man. You know, just woo. This is brilliant.
Exactly.
But also,
some of us have to kind of, you know, have to be stewards of the future.
Yeah. Also, some other people go like, I have a gun, and if you don't run, you're gonna die. You know, that's the other.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's exactly what they're saying. Or that you'll be overtaken by someone who is willing to run. Right. Yeah. Yes. But you know, it's interesting because every version of the future that we look at, something I want to make sure I share with you, and is every version of the future that people talk about, since you brought up Richard Rommel as well, is almost every discipline looks at the future as something that's coming at you, that you need to prepare yourself for. You need to be future proof. You need to be future ready. You need to batten down the hatches, right? Like it's coming, like this giant wave, even like books called The Coming Wave and things like that. The wave, it's the future. I actually like to completely reverse that paradigm and say that what future do I want to move toward? Am I going to move toward the future in a specific direction? And that's essentially what my work is about. Future solving is choosing a future that you want to exist and then solving for that future like you would a math equation. And asking the question, what would have to be true? Yeah. How do we make that future inevitable? Yeah. What kind of relationships can I leverage? What kind of capital, resources, et cetera, to make that future inevitable. And so that's essentially taking the future into your own hands, which I know it can be considered a fairly American idea, but no, but it isn't. But it's been amazing. No, but it's you're the cat in Alice in Wonderland, right? People are like, oh, which road should I take? Depends on where you want to go. You know? Exactly. Yeah. And people say, oh, well, where's everyone else already going? And the question is, I mean, that's not the right question, because if everyone else is already going there, that means there's no competitive differentiation. No, exactly. But then the problem is, how do they know who to trust? Because if they say, If you had 7 different advisors pointing you in all different directions, you might size up. Unfortunately, right now, a lot of the sizing up is based on follower count.
Yeah, but I've just I just written a piece also about SaaS, just a little bit about SaaS and how you can now make with AI coding agents, can actually make things that are more close to your own value chain instead of having a standard solution all the time that doesn't fit anyone. I'm saying that people were like, when they bought SaaS, it's a little bit comparable. They're like, oh, it doesn't fit me entirely. I'm so surprised that a standard solution for the entire market and every company in the world is not exactly what I need for my particular business process. I'm like, surprise,
right.
Are you really surprised at that?
Right.
You go buy, non-tailored suits. You go buy, I always compare it to going to IKEA right now. You can go into IKEA. Nothing in IKEA is ugly, not objectively ugly, but it doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit. And that's the problem, right? It doesn't exactly fit your home. And that's the big problem with AI, that you need to figure out how does it cater to what you want? How does your home look? How does your company look? What is the purpose you want to build for? How do you want people to feel when they get into your shop? And why would you want them to think that being in your home is different than being in another person's home? It's all about this, identifying. It's all about identifying where's your unique differentiator and where you just like everyone else. And sorry, that's consulting 101, and that's why people are like, oh, don't give me that consulting bullshit. Yeah, but you need consulting bullshit right now. And I'm not saying it because I'm a consultant.
And it's not even
I'm saying it because you really need it,
And it's not the function of consulting that they even need. It's just that consultants learned a long time ago how to come in from the outside and ask the right questions to help people move toward creating value. And so it's not that everyone needs to go spend millions of dollars on consultants per se, if they themselves can ask the right questions, right? I mean, and actually one of the things that I write about and talk about is how we need to move away from this world where people used to try to outsource their strategy to McKinsey or BCG, and I don't have any problem with any specific firms, but just the idea of outsourcing your strategy to someone else and your vision for where your future should go, to me is it no longer the path forward. People need to instead, and consultants need to instead be facilitators of the people who are experts in that business, in its culture, in its ecosystem, with all of its partners and competitors and customers, to come up with the vision for where their organization should go that could create new growth categories, could create a whole new wave of value. And the consultants be the infrastructure and the facilitators of that to help them create that vision, create the strategy, to then go execute. And that they'll have so much more buy-in to go execute on that than if they're handed a 200-page PowerPoint from some high-paid consultant. Even if that vision and strategy from the PowerPoint were the right one, they're not going to be as bought in as if they had to develop it themselves.
No, but sometimes it becomes a little bit autistic, I think. I think it's become something where you look at the company as an enterprise architecture. I hate that word. I use it, but I like to talk about cross-company architecture, like we spoke about with the ecosystems. And you need to talk to the SMEs, to the customers, to the clients, to the affiliates, to the public authorities. You need to figure out all of that, because that is where a company exists. A company exists as a mesh. It doesn't, or as a Marco blanket. It doesn't exist as an entity, free of everything that you can go in and look at the company only through your what do you call enlargement glass, and then say, oh, now this is what you should move to, because it affects everything around it, and because it's so interwoven. So you need to, exactly what you're saying, ask those questions, figure out where are the patterns that point in different directions, and how can we maybe make something that on a whole expands the output or the outcome of that company, right? Not just saying, oh, we need to get rid of these 500 people and then do, it's, I don't know. I think it's, but okay. Now,
no, I agree.
Now I said the Richard Rommel thing before. Okay. So just to challenge that a little bit, I'm not seeing what you're going to answer to this, because this is, and I just realized now that, because this is a question I wrote down that I was going to ask you, and the other one with Richard Rommel, I was not going to bring that up, but now I see they're sort of speaking a little bit against each other, right? So I'm saying that the world is in a transformational shift right now. And does our quarter-to-quarter focus in large enterprise benefit or hinder our ability to navigate this transformation? And then you can also move that on to tenure to tenure. And this is the proximate objective to some extent, but is it the wrong proximate objective then, is my question.
It absolutely is the wrong approximate objective, because I would say that if the fundamental goal that you have as let's say you're brought into the company as a CEO, right? If it's a turnaround situation, right, then okay, you have to be able to post results quarter by quarter, because the company's hemorrhaging money, and you have to figure out a way to fix it.
If you're dying, if you're losing blood, you need to stop the bleeding.
You have to, yes.
Monitor the heart rate.
Absolutely, that exists. Like, yes. If it's not, if the company's doing well, posting good margins, then and not not having any other major issues, then I think that people should, instead of being right now, yes, they're measured on quarter by quarter, thanks to the 1970s and the rise of shareholder primacy. But I think the problem that does is that traps us in a loop of endless incrementalism, where all we do every day is just look for what value we're already creating and how do we make it slightly better. And so I think that is part of that's a measurement problem, and that we should instead be measuring the trajectory of it's tough because it's intangible, right? But if you can look at where the organization is currently headed and the degree to which they've raised or lowered the trajectory of the organization as a senior leader. So if they said, okay, right now the organization was headed down, or it was maybe flat, and it has been flat for decades, right? The only change it's had is due to the economic growth of it perfectly mirrors economic growth, but no inorganic growth because of something great we've done.
Yeah.
Now this new CEO put together a 3-year plan or put together a 5-year plan, and they only stayed in the role for 4 years. But by the time they left, they'd completely changed the trajectory, and we have evidence, and we have we can show that this is. We are now we have inorganic growth that didn't exist before. So that person should be rewarded for that. Versus saying, whatever margin you can, it's like saying whatever margin you can drive out of the existing business that you can post results that'll make shareholders happy this quarter, we're going to give you a big bonus for that. Then they're incented to kind of keep almost preying on the existing business and driving and cutting stuff out that may end up very well hurting the business in the long term. Certainly shortcutting or eliminating any opportunities for real, meaningful, long-term innovation, let alone actually, hamstringing the business itself, the core business as it exists in the long term, because of all these attempts to just constantly search for ways to increase margins so you can make
You're looking at the
happy.
company again as an entity, as a thing that you move around, you cut things, you cut corners, instead of looking at it as a mesh and how it's sort of evolving in the space and how it could be more. That's how I see what, but also it's this. I think this way a lot recently, last couple of years, in differentials, right? All the time that there's difference between looking at the differential and looking at the integral. And when you're in a situation where the patient is dying, okay, look at the differential. Get the needle to move up, right? But when you're looking at long-term strategy, you should look at the integral as well. You should look at what do we have. I said this recently. I was doing a keynote for Workday in Amsterdam. I said, the reason you might have trouble sometimes, I sometimes find it difficult to transform with AI, is that you have customers, Oh, that's sorry for you. I feel sorry for you. Oh, it's so terrible for you that you can't AI transform because you have customers. Oh, that's a crappy, terrible situation. It's not, I'm sorry. I'm being sarcastic again here, but no, it's
okay.
No, but you get my point. The integral of where you are, you need to look at that as well and say, how do we move the needle without compromising that and keep that intact, that we've sort of achieved this high level now. We're up here now. Every startup that tries to, every AI-driven startup that tries to disrupt the world wants to become an enterprise with customers and entrenchments, right? That's all everyone wants. They all want to be entrenched and difficult to move, Just
yes, exactly.
How will Lovable look in 2 years? That's a good question. They're hiring like crazy.
I think it's very possible they'll look just like all the startups that popped up around the metaverse.
Yeah, no, but also, okay, that's another thing. But also, they might also just look like a big enterprise, and not be as flexible as they are right now, right?
They'll probably just get acquired by someone.
Yeah. And then they'll have HR systems and employees with rights and benefits, and now we need to move that, and it's so difficult, right? Things become difficult because when you're big, you have infrastructure and people infrastructure. You have the world, and okay, sorry, I'm shouting now, but the world is not greenfield. Damn it, it's brownfield. It's out there. You need to integrate AI into the world. You can't just ex nihilo expect the world to appear because now AI. I said the same thing with RPA, actually. Everyone was like believing that RPA sort of came to Moses on Mount Sinai back then. It's like, no, it didn't. It's not like, here you have it, the tablet of automation. And the same thing here. It doesn't, you get the tablet. Great. You need to preach it. There's a big,
Right.
these 500 people who believe you. Oh, great. But what about the rest of humanity? A lot of people
Yeah,
to tell
that's right.
about, the 10 Commandments, right, Brian?
Yep. Yeah, it's very true. I think that there's a big difference between something actually being useful, that thing being well understood or known, and then people actually believing that thing is useful, and then being able to do something. Like it's a whole journey from having something useful in the first place, getting the word out there. I mean, that's the journey I know I've been on as a thought leader, is like, oh my gosh, this future solving thing is so valuable.
Yeah.
Then it's okay. I guess if I'm going to get more people to understand that, I got to put myself out there on LinkedIn, and okay. And then, and I think every version of that, like something that you think is valuable, and inside of an organization, if you find a framework for, it could be anything, right? Like for giving feedback that you think, oh, wow, this would be so good. We have so much passive aggressivity in our culture. So if we could do this framework, this would be valuable for us. Well, you believe it. Now you have this whole journey ahead of you to get to the point where it's actually others believe it and are willing to adopt it.
Yeah, and you also need to speak. You need to tell it to the boards, obviously. You need to tell it to the directors and the management layer. Yeah. You also need to tell it to the SMEs, because they're the ones actually doing the differences. You need to tell it to the future leaders, because they will maybe be the one driving it. And they're not in the board today, but they will be. And they need to understand what you're saying now. So the whole preaching thing, and this is just, the human side of it, but the whole integrating, then you hold systems as well, the data flows, the customer product services, the integration into that is like meticulous. It's minutiae, it's like I said, this amazing supply chain of everything we have in the world. You need to just go into a shopping mall and imagine you have to install AI into every single piece of thing there, It's
right.
Crazy, right?
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, it is.
But Brian, this has been a really, really great conversation. I've loved having you on The Only Constant here.
Thank you.
And I have a final question for you.
Okay, I'm ready for it.
I'm ready for it. Do you know what I'm going to ask you? You do, but
of course I do. Yeah, you prepped me. You did a good job.
No, but I also asked you a lot of other questions that I prepped you for. But I think that's been, it's been a really great chat. So, Brian, what is the only constant?
So I would say that, and I'm hoping that there's no one else who's answered this way, but you'll have to let me know. I think that love is the only constant. I think that when you peel it all back, when we talk about AI agents and this empire building that people do, and the value that we try to create in the world, when you just boil it all down to why are we doing this? Why are we waking up and logging on to these systems, or why are we going out, getting dressed and leaving our house and going to these meetings and going to these restaurants or going to these parties or whatever it is we're going to? I think the thing that underpins it all is love. And I think that people want to be able to, if you think about the sort of equation that we have right now, is that you have to work in order to make money, in order to pay for your loved ones and for the life that you want to have. And so I think that to me, the way that I found the most purpose and meaning and value is the more that I double down on even love, even in business friendships, right? Like keeping in mind why we're actually doing what we're doing, and the thing about that person that makes them themselves, and not just sort of this avatar that floats around in a Zoom meeting that I try to do transactions with, but like a real person with important relationships that matter to them. How they're the main character in their life. And so how can I be as a secondary character or third character, or whatever, tertiary, that's been introduced to their life? What's my role in that? And how can I be helpful and useful? And to me, that when I'm living in that, with that awareness, I feel connected. And I think that all of us, like back to the idea that everything is relational inside of our organizations, when the further you get away from that, and from the idea of even just love, which we never talk about in business, I think the more disconnected people feel from why are we even doing this? Why does this matter? And I think we're seeing a big rise from Gen Z and soon Gen Alpha entering the workforce, saying, why are we here? Why does this matter? And I'm actually very hopeful, because I think that there's a lot of stuff that we do, spend time and money on, that are working against what really matters if we were to ever stop and think about it.
That's such a great answer, Brian. I think it's brilliant. I think also it ties back to everything we've spoken about with not synthetic or I would say indifferent relationships like the ones AI do, right? But because love in a very strict formal sense is always particular, right? The particularity is actually maybe what's at the heart of this. I think you tied this conversation up so neatly with this constant. I really enjoyed it. And I would love to say to you right now that this has been, as per your constant, a lovely conversation, Brian. I love it.
Wonderful. I'm glad to hear it, and I appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend or a colleague.